Hello and welcome to our presentation and introduction to Adaptive Case Management, ACM in short, with Bonitasoft as the underlying business process management platform or technology. We're going to focus on two basic things during the presentation. One is looking at a conceptual description of what adaptive case management is, what it does, and give a couple of examples and use cases. And the second part, go into a live demonstration using Bonitasoft and producing an example for financial institutions to give a more visual picture of ACM in action. So what is adaptive case management or ACM? Adaptive case management can be described as an evolutionary step or as a subcategory at least of business process management or BPM, being BPM still its core subject. That means that ACM shares most of the goals that a typical BPM solution would bring to a table. The core differentiators, however, will be that while BPM will be focusing mainly on very rigid, very well-defined business processes that have clearly laid out logical sequences and ramifications that are adhering to predefined business process rules. The ACM would handle dynamic processes that can be very flexible as to having any number of different logical branches to them, depending on the decision the different process actors will execute and make during the case lifecycle. And in that sense, the value proposition of an ACM or an ACM-based automation is clearly distinctive from that of an BPM automation, in that it adds substantial benefits to processes that are highly burdened by exceptions. So processes that have a lot of individual actors, data silos, and exceptions at their base to be handled by an ECM. Instead of very rigid business processes that then could be automated by a simpler BPM. That is the core strength of an adaptive case management. Like we see here on the present slide, a visit to the doctor's office would be a great example to demonstrate of what an ACM actually does and where its biggest values are. You would have principal logical process milestones in that case. In other words, a logical business framework of the process sequence, but all the minor details of things that can happen in between those macro milestones are almost entirely subject to each specific case. So you would have the logistical preparation of the schedule itself for the visit to the doctor's office. Then you would have some sort of a pre-screening step. And lastly, in this example, the examination by the doctor itself, with possible follow-up steps and receipts. In between those macro steps, however, all sorts of decisions, exceptions, and outcomes could occur. The patient can be late, or the doctor could be held up due to an emergency, for example. Also, most of the possible outcomes from the doctor's evaluation are unknown until the visit is actually over. In that relation, doctor's appointments, legal case management, complaints management, and many other dynamic processes are perfect candidates for a solution that handles dynamic cases like the one we see here, rather than strict and well-defined rigid processes, where the dynamic cases are handled by an ACM, while the strict and rigid processes would be handled by a BPM. In summary, adaptive case management is centered around unstructured dynamic processes, and ACM solutions are usually highly data-centric, meaning that they capture absolutely everything that happens before, during, and after the decision is being made within the ACM solution. In most cases, the variables of the processes are completely or at least partially unknown, which is a key differentiator if you compare an ACM with a BPM-based automation. And lastly, an ACM it has to be capable of handling multiple multiple possible outcomes and also allow for undefined outcomes and process pathways. So if there's a decision being made that leads to a new user step that doesn't even exist yet, the technical capabilities to handle and capture that has to be there within an ACM platform or solution. While Bonitasoft as a software vendor and as a software itself is categorized as an iBPMS, in intelligent BPMS platform. Yeah, since version 7.9 of the BPM Enterprise platform, you can, as a user, natively create dynamic process models, meaning that you can either create a complete dynamic process from scratch or build in dynamic process aspects within a rigid business process itself. Yeah, from there to define dynamic process roles, actors, filters, and profiles. Meaning, yeah, portions and the actors themselves can be declared as a dynamic variable and ultimately leverage all the dynamic components of an ACM as part of the existing user interface or create a completely new interface from scratch dedicated to that purpose of ACM. So in the following examples, you will see a small and very simple live demonstration just to give a more plastic example of ACM in action within Bonitasoft of a credit card dispute resolution, yeah, as an example for case management for a bank, for example. So here we can see an example of a process for credit card dispute resolutions where Daniela Angelo, a user of the customer service department, is logged in and she has a permission to generate new cases. And here we can see the list of open as well as disclosed dispute cases. She proceeds to press the plus icon and generates a new dispute. Once she hits the button, all the associated data that needs to be entered will be captured, and the additional ad hoc information will be entered as well from her, depending on a case-by-case basis. So those are the items that are for the discretionary tasks, the kind of tasks that can be executed as many times as needed, and are one distinctive feature of an ACM. We can attach also documents, as you saw here, and comments as well. On the right side, we see the case history, and all the information that we enter will be updated every time a task is executed. The next step from here forward will be gathering the the dispute details, which is required for the task resolution. We will enter all the information, in this case, in this example's currency, amount, dispute, and transaction date. Here we can reject the dispute, or like in this case, we will follow up on it and drill further down. Once done, we can see the gathered dispute details, and the task, the registration task, the initial task is complete for now. The next step will be initiating the transaction investigation. And if we check the dispute information, we can see the status of now being changed to investigating. Here we log in as Joseph Howell, and he has some tasks assigned from Daniela Angelo that she couldn't perform with her role. For example, the chargeback and investigative tasks related to the transaction. Since they are limited to the dispute agent only. Joseph will investigate the list of transactions of the customer, and to do that, he drills down on the account details during the investigation, and we can see there's a transaction that matches the transactions reported by the customer earlier. So in this example, we copy the MIN number, the merchant identification number, and with this information, we basically update the dispute information. Uh, in this basic example, we copy and paste the MIN number over to the status to processing, or to initiate the process, the chargeback processing. We can observe that the chargeback task is not available, and this is due to the policy that says that if the amount is more or higher than 500 as a currency value, an approval by the manager is required. And in that sense, we open the case with the profile from Zachary Williamson, the dispute agent manager. And in his view, we can observe that there's a task to be updated with that information. Right now, the value is at 500, and we won't change that. What we will do is execute the review task to approve the chargeback and add the comment related to that decision and press the validation button. Once done, we can basically log in again with the profile from Joseph Howell we used before. Now we can observe that the chargeback task is available and proceed to execute and add a comment. After that, we execute the investigate transaction task and proceed there to add a comment as well. Once done, then we can observe that the update dispute is not available anymore since we executed the chargeback task itself. We can call the customer to keep him updated with the corresponding details of his disputes, and we proceed to execute the call customer task and add a comment and save the file or the comment to the case. Now, finally, we press the resolve button to conclude and finish the task. And see here the opened and updated closed disputes in the list. As we can see, in Bonitasoft, it can be used to develop adaptive case management processes as standalone solutions or as ad hoc components of existing processes themselves, where the task availability depends on the process data and where we want to leverage a case-centric approach with a focus on data and files as drivers of the process execution. Thank you very much.